Top 10 works of performance art you should know. 10. In Joseph Boys' I Like America and America Likes Me, Boys flew to New York and was taken by ambulance to the site of the performance, room in the Rene Bloch Gallery. He was not ill or even in pain, but Boys lay on the ambulance stretcher swathed in felt. When he arrived, he shared the gallery with a wild coyote, a wild beast often considered to represent America's untamed spirit. He did this for 8 hours a day for 3 days. At times he stood, wrapped in a thick, gray blanket of felt, leaning on a large shepherd's staff. At other times he watched the coyote as the coyote shredded the blanket to pieces. At the end of the 3 days, Boys hugged the coyote that had grown quite tolerant of him, and was taken to the airport. Again he rode in a veiled ambulance, leaving America without having set foot on American soil. 9. Vito Acconci's Seabed is a performance piece first performed on 15th to the 29th January 1972 at Sonnabend Gallery in New York. In the gallery there was a low wooden ramp merging with the floor. The ramp extended across the width of the room, beginning to feet up the side of one wall and slanting down to the middle of the floor. In his original performance of the piece, Acconci lay hidden underneath the ramp masturbating. He spoke fantasies about the visitors walking above him, which were heard through loudspeakers in the gallery. In Seabed, Acconci is the producer and the receiver of the work's pleasure. He is simultaneously public and private, demonstrating ultra-awareness of his viewers. A video documentation of the piece itself shows no sexual content. It all is merely suggested. 8. Bruce Naumann's Walking in an Exaggerated Manner Around the Perimeter of a Square is a video that shows him doing exactly that. Placing one foot in front of the other, he walks forwards and backwards, with a pronounced swinging of his hips, around the edge of a square of masking tape affixed to his studio's concrete floor. The silence of his studio is broken only by the rapid clicking sound made by the rolling film, which calls attention to the camera itself. Rather than ensuring that it follows his movements, the artist leaves the camera fixed in one place. As a result, he sometimes disappears off screen as he treads the parts of the perimeter outside of the camera's frame. 7. Gillian Waring's Dancing in Peckham is a 25-minute video that is shown on an ordinary television monitor. Waring, under the glass roof and on the shiny walkway in the mall, has a look of intense seriousness on her face as she throws her hair about, shakes and moves. There's an element of absurdity in dancing in a public place in broad daylight. She is not even dancing to a Walkman, just to sounds in her head. In the course of the video she changes style, moving to different imaginary sounds. In all that time no one comes up to her, no one stops her. They walk on by, looking contemptuous or indifferent. The other people walking by become as mysterious as the dancer, who is creating both a self-portrait and an image of what it is to be lost in a private rhapsody. 6. In Gilbert and George is the singing sculpture. The two artists stand together on a table, dancing and singing the Flanagan and Allen song Underneath the Arches, a song in which two tramps describe the pleasures of sleeping rough. It was a telling choice, harking back to pre-war England and traditions of vaudeville while also identifying with the fringes of society. Gilbert and George were invited to present the singing sculpture all over the world, sometimes for 8 hours at a stretch. Realizing, however, that they could reach only a handful of people at a time, they began to create films and pictures that could extend the idea of living sculpture without requiring their physical presence. 5. Bastian Ada's I'm Too Sad to Tell You consist of two films, a postcard and a photographic work which depict the artist crying for an unknown reason. His face is framed closely. There is no introduction or conclusion, no reason given and no relief from the anguish that is presented. The postcards were also mailed to his friends with the inscription "I'm too sad to tell you." Hader walks a fine line between sincerity and melodrama, making an overall tension between the emotional and performative aspects of the work. 4. Francis Alise's work Paradox of Praxis 1. Sometimes making something leads to nothing, is the documentation of an action performed on the streets of Mexico City in 1997. The film depicts Alise performing a simple and seemingly pointless endeavor, pushing a large block of ice through the city streets until it melts away to nothing. Yet in doing so it reclaims something of itself. The apparently futile gesture becomes paradoxical. It is the subject of its own film. An artwork. Nothing to something. 3. Marina Abramovich's Rhythm Zero is a performance piece that took place at Studio More in Naples in 1974. The work involved Abramovich standing still while the audience was invited to do to her whatever they wished using one of 72 objects she had placed on a table. These included a rose feather, perfume, honey, bread, grapes, wine, scissors, a scalpel, nails, a metal bar, and a gun loaded with one bullet. Abramovich's original intention for the piece is explained by her written instructions which accompanied the work. For a period of 6 hours, visitors were invited to use any of the objects on the table on the artist, who subjected herself to their treatment. 2. Chris Burden's Shoot is one of his most infamous works. He asked a friend to shoot him with a .22 rifle from a distance of 15 feet. The bullet was originally supposed to nick the side of Burden's arm, but the shooter was slightly off target and the bullet went through his arm instead. The piece presented exactly what happens when a person is shot so that the audience could experience it in person, and not just in a detached setting such as watching the television while sitting comfortably on the couch. The work also poses questions about the nature of power and following orders, a theme especially indicated by the imperative of the title "Shoot" itself. 1. Yoko Ono's cut piece was first performed in 1964 at the Sugetsu Art Center in Tokyo. Cut piece had one destructive verb as its instruction. Ono executed the performance in Tokyo by walking on stage and casually kneeling on the floor in a draped garment. Audience members were requested to come on stage and begin cutting until she was naked. Ono performed this piece again in London and other venues, garnering drastically different attention depending on the audience. In Japan, the audience was typically shy and cautious, while London participators were a bit more zealous.